So here we are going to complete our chapter 19, and in this part we will see what is apoptosis. Apoptosis basically is a programmed cell death. What does that mean? That if there is a problem in the cell will rather go for an option to destroy itself, so that the organism should be safe, right? If for example we have trillions of cells in our body, if there is a problem in the cell, the first thing the cell will do that it should destroy itself, because the destroyed cells can be replaced by a new one later on. But if that cell is going to divide again and again with a problem, and that will create a bigger problem for the organism. That's why apoptosis, it is a programmed cell death, and it is triggered by some of the factors as listed here: activation of the death receptors, withdrawal of the survival factors, and whenever there is a damage in the DNA. So how do the cell die in apoptosis? Through orderly dismantling of a dying cell's contents, okay, and they will be destroyed in pieces. We will see that how that process goes on. So what is the difference between apoptosis and necrosis? Apoptosis is a programmed cell death, and there is no pain, no inflammation or no infection in apoptosis. But in case of necrosis, there is always a pain, there is always a swelling, disruption of the injured cells, and massive tissue injury. But in apoptosis there is no tissue injury, and just the internal contents, they are dismantled by the formation of tiny packets or tiny contents, some kinds of sacs, and that can be recycled, right? So here again some of the differences through images. Necrosis, as you can see, it may be reversible at some point, right? And but after crossing some of the features, it becomes irreversible and disintegration. But here the normal cell, you can see, and when it is going through apoptosis, it will be condensed, then it will be fragmented, and then the apoptotic bodies are formed, small sacs. You can see the small droplets type stuff here, because apoptosis will give rise to these small vesicles or the small pieces, and these pieces, these are taken up by the lysosomes or some other parts, and they can be recycled, right? So this is one of the difference here. Recycling stuff is not that possible, because everything is disintegrated abruptly. So necrosis, it is a murder, while the apoptosis is a suicide in the cell biology language. So it is always involves some pathological conditions, but here there is no pathology, only that there is a physiological problem. So here the energy independent, it is a passive thing, and here energy dependent and genetic programmed cell death. But here there is no program, but actually the cell is injured because of any injury to the tissues, and here the loss of the membrane integrity, and here the cellular and nuclear condensation occurs, and the surrounding tissues is not damaged in the apoptosis, but it is damaged in the necrosis. And apoptosis and 3 beer, this is the heading for this slide, and here you can see that the cancer, if we have not enough apoptosis, it will lead to cancer. Because not enough means if the apoptosis is not enough, it will lead to the survival of the bad cells. When the bad cells, they survive, so those cells are going to cause harm, because they will divide and divide and divide, and the errors will be accumulated, right? And if there is no apoptosis, is not enough, autoimmune diseases, they can arise, and the susceptibility to the infection, it is increased. and if the apoptosis is too much, tissue will be damaged, and they may play a role in many degenerative diseases where the too much apoptosis is there. So just write this is the physiological condition of the apoptosis, and it should be normal functions of the body. For example, the separation of fingers in the embryo, webbing in between fingers disappears because of the apoptosis, right? We have space between our fingers because the membrane between these two fingers has been deteriorated because of the apoptosis. If there has been no apoptosis, we still have webbed finger, right? And then here there are some of the processes that need just right apoptosis to perform their functions. Size, uptake, membrane, organelles, these are some of the factors that are responsible for the differences between a necrosis and apoptosis. And here you see the cell lysis occurs, and here the no lysis but the apoptotic bodies are found. So these are, you can study these. I will also share one of the video regarding the apoptosis. Again, what is the cause of the apoptosis, what is the whether it is intrinsic from inside or the outside. So the cause may be from inside as well as from outside, and here in the necrosis the cause is always outside. So maybe virus, maybe an injury, maybe a bacteria, maybe fungus, whatsoever. So they requires ATP, yes, but in necrosis they don't require any ATP. Cell contents, they are packaged into apoptotic bodies, but here spill onto the tissues, and mostly they are not recycled. Here they are recycled. So there are two routes but one destination. Here you see the death receptors. If the death receptors are activated, it means the cell has decided to go for apoptosis. And the number two thing is the absence of the survival factors. There are some factors present on the surface of the cell membrane in the shape of receptors, and if the number of receptors number of survival factor receptors, if they are less, it means the cell has decided to go for apoptosis. Similarly, if the death receptors are appeared on the cell, they will allow the immune cells to come close to them and cause the destruction of the cells through apoptosis. So there are two different routes, but the destination is the same. What is the destination? Destination is apoptosis. So here you see the initiator caspases. The caspases are the enzymes that are activated in both routes. In this route, death promoting proteins, they will activate the P53, and P53 is going to activate the cytochrome C, and this cytochrome C, when it is outside of the mitochondria, it is going to cause the activation of caspases. When these caspases are activated, they will activate apoptosis here. The caspase 3 is known as the executioner caspase. When the caspase 3 is found from this pathway or from this pathway or from both pathways, they are going to activate the apoptosis, right? So there are two different routes but only one destination, and that is the apoptosis. So thank you very much for your attention, and now we will discuss our last chapter, the chapter about the cancers. Thank you very much.